Welcome back to a new post today. Let's today discuss the most important topics that we need to keep track for November 12th for the upcoming UPSC Civil Services Examination Prelims of 2025. The very first is about the jargon of the COP29 discussions that were held. The very first is about the acronym, that is UNFCCC, which stands for United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, and it is the name of a 1992 treaty that was adopted during the Earth Summit at Rio de Janeiro. It is a convention to fight global warming, and it's the secretariat set up to implement that treaty. Apart from that, we have COP, or the Conference of Parties. This acronym describes the annual summit of the countries that have signed the treaty of the United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change, and this year 2029 was held at Baku, and it marks the 29th such gathering of the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change since 1994 and not 1992. The next is about NCQG. This new acronym was at focus at COP29, and it stands for New Collective Quantitative Quantified Goal on Climate Finance. It is an annual target for funding of developing countries' climate efforts by the developed countries. And NDC, which is called as Nationally Determined Contributions, are referred to simply country pledges and describe national action plans for reducing the emissions and adapting to climate impacts. The next round of the NDCs is due in February 2025, though some countries plan to submit new plans at Baku. And global warming, the term describes gradual increase in the global average temperature. Carbon offset, also known as carbon credit, these instruments allow a country or a company to compensate for some of their carbon emissions by investing in projects to bring emissions down elsewhere. And Article 6 of the United Nations Framework Convention for Climate Change, the term refers to the provision in Paris Agreement on carbon offsets, and it is used as shorthand for United Nations Framework Convention of Climate Change efforts to regulate the international trading in carbon credits. Governments want to resolve the rules for trading carbon offsets at COP29. Apart from that, we have climate change. This term is often used interchangeably with global warming, but it means something different. Climate change describes the global warming and its consequences of climate and extreme weather events. Greenhouse gases. These gases are called simply trap the solar heat, which is reflected back by the Earth's surface and also incoming solar radiation, and causes more warming of the earth. The more powerful greenhouse gases are methane and carbon dioxide, which are also referred to as carbon emissions. Both molecules contain carbon, and the world's excess carbon emissions comes from burning of fossil fuels and industrial activities. The next is about net zero. This term does not mean releasing zero emissions, but rather releasing no more than the amount being recaptured by the CO2 abatement technologies like tree planting or other means. Reaching net zero would mean atmospheric greenhouse gases concentration stop increasing. And loss and damage, the government last year pledged $800 million towards a new loss and damage fund to help poorer countries hit by climate fuel disasters. The fund will now have a director and a host nation, which will now be deciding how the funds should be dispersed and calling for more contributions from COP29. So next let's see what are the important highlights of the Cali COP26, which was held in Colombia. So the Cali COP26, which was held in Colombia, is a very important meeting with regard to your Convention for Biological Diversity, and discussions were on the Convention of Biological Diversity. So yes. Just a moment. Okay, some of the highlights with regard to Cali, Colombia are the negotiations where the halt and reverse biodiversity lost. The negotiations were to halt and reverse the biodiversity lost by 2020. The highlight was engagement of indigenous people and local communities, but it revealed that none of the countries are on track to actually achieving the goal of 2020 30 into 30, that's saving 30% of the biodiversity resources before 2030. So okay. The highlight was engagement of indigenous people and local communities. It revealed that none of the countries are on track with 30 into 30, that is preserving 30% of the land and oceans by 2030. It included inclusive decision making, so the negotiators now decided to involve the indigenous people and local communities in decision making. Biodiversity funding, establishment of a CALI fund, which the companies who use the biological diversity resources will share the profit or the revenue with the indigenous people who have participated in nurturing these resources. And biological defense, the COP 2016 also decided to check spread of invasive species. It also called for momentum of blue, that is, the negotiators now decided to deal with something called as ocean conservation. So Biological Defense COP 2016, the proposed guidelines to manage invasive alien species. Momentum for blue is to identify new ecologically or biologically significant marine areas which are critical and vulnerable parts of the ocean. Apart from that is One Health. A global action plan on biodiversity and health was established at COP 26 at 16, underscores the need for holistic One Health approach, which calls for collective focus on ecosystem, animal and human health. Apart from that, we have involved innovating with caution, redesigning organisms for creating new biological systems was an important topic of discussion at the COP 16. We had countries' representatives also discussing regulatory frameworks to manage the risk and balance between innovation and conservation of biological resources. COP 17 is going to be held in Armenia. So the next COP 17 to the Convention on Biological Diversity, which is another document that was adopted in 1992 Earth Summit or the Rio de Janeiro Summit, is going to be held in Armenia next year. So these are some of the points I thought I should be discussing with you with regard to the November 12th preliminary important points. Apart from that, we also have National Biodiversity Strategies and Action Plan. Please take a look into what is this and what exactly India is doing under the National Biodiversity Strategic Action Plan. So these are some of the points. If you did, please do like, share and subscribe, and don't forget to comment at the end of the video. I shall see you tomorrow in another important post. Until then, it's very happy learning.